A stranger's hand closed around hers in a crowded saloon, and the only man who could save her offered something far more dangerous than protection. The reward poster fluttered loose from the cowboy's pocket just as 4 armed riders stepped through the saloon doors. Glasses stopped clinking. The piano missed a note. Savannah felt the stranger's fingers tighten around her wrist, while dust and smoke from a distant grassfire drifted in through the open doorway. Then the cowboy leaned close enough for only her to hear him. "Be my wife for one night." She had never seen him before, but the men searching for her had. "Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you're watching from in the comments." The first thing Savannah Reed noticed was the smell. Smoke. Not the familiar smell of a cooking fire or a ranch chimney at sundown. This was different. Heavy, bitter. It hung over Dust Hollow like a dark blanket, carried by the hot Arizona wind from the grasslands west of town. The stagecoach driver had pointed toward the horizon before climbing back onto his seat. "Fire's been running wild for 2 days," he'd said. "Road south is closed. Railroad ain't moving either." Then he'd snapped the reins and left her standing in the dust. Savannah watched the coach disappear. She was alone. Again. The leather handle of her suitcase dug into her palm. Inside were 2 dresses, a Bible, a silver locket that had belonged to her mother, and a folded packet of documents she had guarded for nearly a week. Everything else had been left behind. Philadelphia. Her father's house. The future someone else had chosen for her. She drew a slow breath and looked up the main street. Dust Hollow wasn't much. A general store, a blacksmith, a barber, a small boarding house already overflowing with stranded travelers, and one large saloon glowing with lamplight as evening settled over the town. The sign above the door read, "The Silver Spur." At that moment, it looked like the only warm place left in Arizona. Savannah pushed through the swinging doors. Conversation dipped, not stopped, just dipped, the way it always did when somebody unfamiliar walked into a room where everyone knew everyone else. She felt the eyes, men playing cards, cowboys nursing whiskey, miners with dust still on their boots, a piano player stumbling through a tune near the back wall. Savannah lifted her chin and kept walking. Her mother had taught her that years ago. Never walk into a room like you're asking permission. Walk in like you belong there. The bartender slid a coffee mug toward her after she paid 2 coins. The coffee was terrible. Burned, bitter, perfect. She wrapped both hands around the mug and sat near the far end of the bar. For the first time in days, she felt almost safe. Almost. Then she heard laughter behind her, male laughter, the kind that always came a second before trouble. Well now, Savannah closed her eyes briefly. Would you look at that? She turned. 3 cowboys. Young, drunk, sunburned faces, dusty hats. The tallest one leaned against a table and grinned. "Didn't know angels rode trains." His friends laughed. Savannah looked back toward her coffee. "Not interested." The man stepped closer. "Didn't your mama teach you manners?" "My mother taught me plenty," Savannah said. The grin widened. Then she forgot one thing. "And what's that? How to smile?" The men laughed again. Savannah stood. She grabbed her suitcase. She intended to walk away. The cowboy caught her arm. Not hard, but enough. The room seemed to shrink. Every instinct inside her tightened. For a second she was back in Philadelphia. Back at that dinner table. Back under Gideon Crowley's cold eyes. Back hearing her father explain why her opinions no longer mattered. The cowboy smiled. "Easy now. Let go. Just trying to be friendly." "Then you're failing." A few men nearby looked away. Others pretended not to notice. The piano continued. A glass clinked somewhere behind her. The cowboy's fingers tightened slightly, And then another voice entered the room. Low, calm, dangerously calm. Take your hand off her. The piano stopped. The entire saloon seemed to pause. Savannah turned. A man was standing near the back wall. Tall, lean, broad shoulders beneath a weathered brown coat. Dark hat pulled low. A face carved by sun and years. Not handsome in the polished Eastern way. Something harder than that. Something earned. The cowboy holding Savannah's arm went pale. Not scared. Worse, respectfully afraid. Everyone knew him. Savannah could tell immediately. The room had changed. The air itself felt different. The stranger took one step forward. Didn't hear me? He asked. The cowboy released her arm. Immediately. Wasn't doing nothing. The stranger said nothing. He didn't need to. 3 seconds later, all three cowboys were moving toward the opposite side of the room. Nobody stopped them. Nobody laughed. Savannah stared. The stranger returned to his table, picked up a coffee cup, as though nothing had happened. She hesitated, then walked over. Thank you. He looked up. His eyes were gray, not cold, just careful. You all right? Yes. Good. That appeared to be the end of the conversation. Savannah remained standing. The man noticed. You need something else? A place to sit, maybe. He glanced at the empty chair. Chair's not mine. She sat. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. My name is Savannah Reed. I know. That froze her. What? Town talks. He took a drink of coffee. Woman traveling alone. Eastern accent. Expensive suitcase. Been here less than an hour. Savannah studied him. And you are? Wyatt Boone. The name landed immediately. Two men nearby exchanged glances. A ranch hand at another table quietly looked away. Apparently everyone knew Wyatt Boone. Everyone except her. Before she could ask another question, the saloon doors burst open. Cold evening air rolled inside. 4 men entered. Dust-covered coats, hard faces, professional eyes, not locals. Savannah's stomach dropped. She recognized one of them instantly, not by name, by memory. He had stood behind Gideon Crowley during a dinner party 3 months earlier, watching, listening, waiting. The man scanned the room. Savannah looked away too late. His eyes caught hers. Just for a second. It was enough. Wyatt noticed. Friends of yours? No. Thought so. The man was already moving through the room, checking faces, checking tables. Savannah felt her pulse hammering. They found me. Wyatt watched the approaching group. How bad? Very. You run? They catch me. The man reached the next table, then the next. Closer, closer. Savannah could hear her heartbeat. Then Wyatt leaned toward her, close enough that only she could hear. Listen carefully. She turned. His voice dropped even lower. Be my wife for one night. Savannah stared. What? You heard me. The bounty hunter was only 2 tables away now. Why would I? Because in 10 seconds they're going to ask who you are. His gaze never left the approaching men. And if you're sitting alone, they'll keep looking. The footsteps came closer. What if I say no? Wyatt finally looked at her. Just once. Then you'd better start running. The men stopped beside their table. The leader tipped his hat. Evening. Wyatt nodded. Looking for someone, the man said. Are you? A woman. Savannah felt Wyatt's hand settle lightly over hers. Steady. Natural. Like he'd done it 1,000 times. My wife and I haven't seen anybody unusual, he said. The man looked at Savannah. She forced herself to smile. Every muscle in her face felt made of stone. The stranger studied them, then looked at Wyatt again. Recognition flashed. Whatever he saw there made him reconsider. Sorry to bother you. The men moved on. Savannah didn't breathe until they reached the far end of the room. Then she finally exhaled. Slowly. Carefully. Wyatt released her hand. They'll be back. I know. They know you're here now. Yes. Outside, smoke drifted across the dark Arizona sky. Inside, the piano started again. Nobody was paying attention to them anymore. But Savannah knew the danger hadn't passed. Not even close. Wyatt stood. Get your suitcase. She looked up. Why? Because if you stay in Dust Hollow tonight, they'll take you back. He placed a few coins on the table, then looked toward the window. Toward the darkness beyond town. My ranch is 6 miles north. Savannah hesitated. Trusting strangers had nearly ruined her life once already, but staying here would ruin it for sure. Outside, one of Gideon's men was already crossing the street toward the boarding house. Searching. Closer. Closer. Wyatt picked up his hat. Coming? Savannah looked at the door, then at the men hunting for her. She grabbed her suitcase and followed him into the Arizona night. The smoke was thicker outside. It drifted across the moon like a dark curtain, turning the stars dim and distant. Wyatt Boone's horse was tied beside the hitching rail, a tall bay gelding with a white mark between its eyes. Wyatt untied the reins without hurry. Nothing about him seemed hurried. Not his walk, not his voice, not even the way he glanced toward the street where Gideon's men were beginning to spread through town. They'll check every room before midnight, he said. Savannah adjusted her grip on the suitcase. You seem very sure. I've seen men get paid to find things. And? They usually do. That wasn't comforting. Yet somehow it felt honest. Wyatt took her suitcase from her hand before she could object and secured it behind the saddle. Then he offered his hand. Not dramatically. Not like a gentleman from Philadelphia. Just practical. A rancher's hand helping someone onto a horse. Savannah accepted it. 20 minutes later, Dust Hollow disappeared behind them. The road north wound through dry washes and red stone ridges. Coyotes called somewhere far away. The smell of smoke followed them. Savannah rode behind Wyatt in silence. Every now and then she looked back. Toward town. Toward the life chasing her. Toward the future she had nearly been trapped inside. After a while, Wyatt spoke. How far did you come? Pennsylvania. He nodded. Nothing more. Most people would have asked questions. Wyatt didn't, and somehow that made her want to answer them. I left 6 days ago. Still nothing. I took a train west. The horse's hooves clicked against stone. I didn't leave a note. The silence stretched. Finally, Wyatt said, Sometimes notes don't help. She wasn't sure why those words settled somewhere inside her. Maybe because they sounded like experience. The ranch appeared shortly after midnight. Copper Mesa Ranch sat beneath a line of red cliffs glowing silver under moonlight. A long wooden fence, a weathered barn, a windmill turning slowly in the night breeze. 2 lanterns burned on the porch of the main house. Someone had left them lit. Waiting. The front door opened before they reached it. An older woman stepped outside. Gray hair, apron, strong shoulders. The kind of woman who had probably run a household through droughts, storms, and stubborn men. She looked at Savannah. then at Wyatt, then back at Savannah. Nothing escaped those eyes. "You're late," she said. Road was crowded. Her gaze lingered on Savannah. No kidding. Wyatt dismounted. "This is Savannah." The woman folded her arms. "I guessed." A pause. "My wife," Wyatt added. Miss Clara raised one eyebrow. Only one. That somehow said more than an entire speech. "I see." "No," Savannah thought. "You absolutely do not." Miss Clara stepped aside. "Come inside before the smoke settles in your lungs." The house surprised her. It wasn't grand. It wasn't polished. But it felt lived in. A quilt folded over a rocking chair, boots beside the door, a stack of ranch ledgers on a side table, a coffee pot still warm on the stove, the sort of details that meant people belonged here. A small figure appeared at the end of the hallway. A little girl in a nightgown, dark braid hanging over one shoulder, sleepy eyes. She stared at Savannah, then at Wyatt, then back at Savannah. "Who is she?" Wyatt removed his hat. "Her name's Savannah." The girl waited, clearly expecting more. Wyatt sighed. "She's my wife." The little girl blinked. Miss Clara turned away so quickly, Savannah nearly laughed. The child looked unconvinced. "Since when?" "Recently." That answer satisfied nobody, least of all the little girl. She walked closer, studied Savannah for a moment, then offered her hand. "I'm Emma." Savannah smiled and shook it. "I'm pleased to meet you." Emma nodded. Apparently that was enough for now. She turned toward Wyatt. "You're terrible at explaining things." Then she disappeared down the hallway. Miss Clara actually laughed. A short sound, like it hadn't been used much lately. Wyatt pointed toward the staircase. "There's a room ready. You expected visitors?" "No." "Then why is it ready?" He looked toward the hallway where Emma had vanished. "Because Clara never expects things to stay the same forever." Miss Clara pretended not to hear. Savannah carried her suitcase upstairs. The room was simple. A brass bed, a wash basin, a wooden dresser, one window overlooking the pasture. She sat on the edge of the mattress. For the first time in nearly a week, there were walls around her, a roof overhead. No train whistle, no station noise, no footsteps searching for her. The realization hit harder than expected. She was safe. At least tonight. The next morning began with the smell of coffee. Strong coffee. Ranch coffee. The kind that could wake the dead. Savannah followed the smell downstairs. The kitchen was already busy. A tall ranch hand with silver in his beard sat at the table studying receipts. Another younger man was repairing a saddle strap. Emma was eating biscuits while reading a book. Wyatt stood near the stove. Everyone looked up. The older ranch hand smiled. "Morning, ma'am." "Hank Miller," Wyatt said. Hank tipped his hat. The younger man stood. "Levi Turner." Savannah greeted them. Nobody asked questions. Nobody acted suspicious, which somehow felt stranger than suspicion. Breakfast passed quietly. But Savannah noticed something. The house wasn't unhappy. It was simply quiet. Too quiet. As if laughter had once lived here and moved away. After breakfast, she wandered into the office. Ledgers covered one desk. Invoices, feed receipts, water contracts, stacks of papers waiting for attention. Without thinking, she began organizing them. An hour later, Wyatt appeared in the doorway. He stopped, looked at the neat piles, then at Savannah. What happened? She glanced up. Your bookkeeping. His expression didn't change. Is it bad? It's terrifying. For the first time, the corner of Wyatt Boone's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. Neither of them knew yet that the danger was moving closer, or that Copper Mesa Ranch was about to remember what it felt like to be alive again. The first few days passed quietly, almost too quietly. Each morning began the same way. Coffee brewing before sunrise, boots crossing the porch, the sound of horses shifting in the corral, the windmill turning against a pale Arizona sky. Savannah found herself waking before everyone else. Old habits. Years of managing a household where every minute belonged to someone else's schedule. Only now, for the first time in a long while, the hours belonged to her. On the third morning, she stepped into the ranch office carrying a cup of coffee and found Hank staring at a mountain of invoices. Feed receipts, freight charges, water agreements, cattle sales. The papers looked as though they had survived a tornado. Hank rubbed his forehead. I swear these things multiply at night. Savannah set down her cup. May I? Hank laughed. Be my guest. 2 hours later, every document sat neatly organized, receipts tied together with twine, bills separated by month, contracts stacked in order. Hank walked in carrying a saddle blanket and stopped dead. What happened? You needed a filing system. I've had one. No, Savannah said. You had a pile. From the doorway, Wyatt watched the exchange. He said nothing, but Savannah noticed him glance at the desk a second time before walking away. That afternoon, Emma appeared carrying 3 books and a look of determination. I hate reading. Savannah looked up from the porch swing. Then why are you holding books? Miss Clara says I have to. The girl dropped into the seat beside her. The books landed with a thud. Savannah opened one. The pages were worn, corners folded, several words marked incorrectly in pencil. Read me the first paragraph. Emma groaned dramatically, then began. She stumbled over half the words, skipped others entirely. Savannah never corrected her immediately. She waited. Let Emma try again, then once more. An hour later, the little girl finished a full page without help. Emma stared at the book, then at Savannah, then back at the book. A slow smile appeared. Small, but real. That evening, Wyatt came home late from checking fences near the north pasture. The sun was dropping behind the red cliffs. Long shadows stretched across the yard. As he approached the house, he heard something unusual. Laughter. He stopped. Actually stopped. The sound was coming through an open window. Emma's laughter. Miss Clara's, too. Inside, Savannah stood at the kitchen table covered in flour. A bowl sat beside her. Emma had somehow managed to get flour on her nose. Miss Clara was laughing so hard she had to hold onto a chair. Wyatt remained on the porch, watching, not entering, just watching. For a moment he looked like a man seeing a familiar place through unfamiliar eyes. Savannah noticed him through the window. Their eyes met, only briefly. Wyatt gave a small nod, then disappeared toward the barn. That night during supper, Emma talked enough for 3 people. Miss Clara pretended to complain. Levi told a story about a stubborn mule. Even Hank smiled. Savannah watched the table, watched the way everyone relaxed without realizing it. The ranch wasn't unhappy. It had simply forgotten how to live. And now something was changing. 3 days later, Savannah climbed a ladder to repair a loose section of porch roof. Miss Clara came outside carrying laundry, nearly dropped the basket. What in heaven's name are you doing? Fixing it. That's Wyatt's job. Savannah hammered another nail. Then he's been putting it off. Miss Clara looked up at the roof, looked at Savannah, then shook her head. You fit in here a little too easily. The words stayed with Savannah longer than she expected. That evening, she wandered into a storage room searching for extra lamp oil. Near the back wall stood an old wooden chest. The lid was slightly open. Inside were papers, photographs, letters, a faded ribbon. Savannah hesitated, then noticed a picture resting on top. Wyatt, several years younger, standing beside a smiling woman, her hand in his. Both dressed for a wedding that apparently never happened. A date was written on the back. 6 years earlier. The photograph felt heavy, not physically, emotionally. Savannah carefully returned it to the box. She closed the lid and quietly left. Meanwhile, 10 miles south of the ranch, Wyatt sat across from a rancher named Eli Dawson inside a small feed store. Eli pushed a folded paper across the counter. I thought you'd want to see this. Wyatt opened it. His eyes narrowed immediately. A survey map, creek routes, underground water access, property boundaries. Copper Mesa sat directly in the center. What is this? Eli lowered his voice. Gideon Crowley's buying land around you. Wyatt looked up. How much? Everything he can. A pause. He's after the aquifer. The words landed hard. The underground water source beneath Copper Mesa supplied nearly every ranch in that valley. Without it, cattle wouldn't last a summer. Neither would families. Wyatt folded the map. Very carefully. How long? Months, maybe. And now? Eli met his eyes. Now he's moving fast. The ride home felt longer than usual. Darkness had settled by the time Wyatt reached the ranch. He dismounted quietly. The porch lantern still burned. Inside, through the window, he could see Savannah helping Emma sound out words from a book. Miss Clara knitted beside the fire. The scene looked ordinary, peaceful, almost fragile. Wyatt stood there for a long moment. Then his hand tightened around the folded map in his coat pocket. He was coming for Copper Mesa Ranch too, and sooner or later, those two dangers were going to become one. For several days, nothing happened. That was the strange part. The world looked peaceful. The mornings arrived clear and bright. The cattle grazed along the lower pasture. Emma read aloud from her books each afternoon, proudly stumbling over fewer words than the day before. Levi repaired fences. Hank argued with supply invoices. Miss Clara pretended not to enjoy having another woman in the house. Life settled into a rhythm, and that rhythm made it easy to forget trouble was riding somewhere beyond the horizon. Almost. One evening, Savannah stepped onto the porch carrying a basket of laundry. The sky looked wrong. Not dark, not cloudy. Wrong. The western horizon glowed orange, far too orange. She stood still, watching. A minute later, Wyatt appeared beside her. Neither spoke. The glow pulsed against the distant hills, like a second sunset, except the sun had already gone down. Fire? Savannah asked. Wyatt nodded. Big one. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon. How big? Big enough. That answer told her everything. The next morning, the smoke arrived. By noon, ashes drifted across the ranch. Tiny gray flakes. Emma tried catching them in her hands until Miss Clara marched her indoors. The wind strengthened through the afternoon. By sunset, ranch hands were moving faster, speaking less, checking water barrels, preparing wagons. Savannah understood. Everyone was waiting. And then, just after midnight, the waiting ended. The shout came from outside. Hank! Another voice followed. Fire crossed the North Ridge. The ranch exploded into motion. Lanterns lit. Doors opened. Boots hit wooden floors. Savannah hurried downstairs. Wyatt was already pulling on gloves. The herd? Hank appeared at the doorway, moving toward the lower canyon. Wyatt grabbed his hat. "We've got to turn them." Then he looked at Savannah. For 1 second only. "Stay with Clara and Emma." Before she could answer, he was gone. The night outside glowed red. Not everywhere, just enough. Enough to make the darkness feel uneasy. Hours passed. No one slept. Miss Clara sat beside the window. Savannah paced. Emma tried pretending she wasn't frightened. Around 3 in the morning, the front door burst open. Levi stumbled inside, covered in dust. "Where's Wyatt?" The question came from all three at once. Levi's face tightened. "Emma!" The room froze. The little girl had been standing beside Savannah. Now she stepped forward. "What about me?" Levi swallowed, then looked around the room, confused. The blood drained from Savannah's face. Emma was here, which meant... A second later, another rider appeared outside, shouting. A ranch hand, breathless. Emma's horse came back empty. The room went silent, dead silent. Emma stared. "Empty?" The rider nodded. No one moved. For one terrible moment, nobody understood. Then Wyatt appeared behind the rider, his shirt streaked with soot, eyes sharp, focused. "She followed us." Emma looked up at him. "What?" Wyatt crossed the room in 2 strides, dropped to one knee, both hands on her shoulders. "You stayed here." Emma blinked. Then realization dawned. The missing child wasn't her. It was another rancher's daughter who had joined the cattle drive earlier that evening. The room exhaled, but only briefly, because the danger remained. The little girl was still out there, lost somewhere beyond the smoke. Wyatt stood, already turning. "I'm going back." "No," Hank said from the doorway. "You'll never see anything in that smoke." Wyatt grabbed a lantern. "Then I'll listen." And before anyone could stop him, he disappeared into the night again. Savannah stood at the doorway long after the hoofbeats faded, watching the glow on the horizon, listening to the wind, waiting. Hours passed. The eastern sky finally began to lighten, pale gray, then silver, then gold. At sunrise, a rider appeared, then another, then a third. The ranch hands, and finally Wyatt. His horse moved slowly, too slowly. Savannah was already halfway across the yard before he reached the barn. The missing girl sat safely behind another rider, alive, exhausted, crying, but safe. Relief swept through the ranch. Then Savannah saw Wyatt. Really saw him. He was pale, one sleeve torn, one hand pressed against his ribs. Not serious, but enough. Enough that he nearly stumbled while dismounting. The moment lasted only a second. Then he straightened, as if nothing had happened, as if pain was merely another chore to be finished before breakfast. Miss Clara pointed toward the house. "You." Wyatt opened his mouth. "No." "Yes." "Clara." "House." Even Hank wisely stayed silent. An hour later, Wyatt sat at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee. Savannah stood beside him holding a clean cloth. "This is ridiculous." "Probably." "Then stop arguing." For the first time in days, Wyatt actually smiled. A real smile. Small. Tired. Gone almost immediately. But real. Savannah carefully cleaned the scrape along his shoulder. Neither said much. The house had grown quiet. Emma was asleep upstairs. The fire had moved east. The danger was finally passing. Outside, wind rattled the cottonwood trees. Inside, something else shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just enough for both of them to notice, and neither of them seemed ready to talk about it. Not yet. The fire moved east by the following afternoon. The danger wasn't gone, just farther away. A haze of smoke still hung above the red cliffs beyond Copper Mesa, turning every sunset into a streak of copper and gold. Life at the ranch slowly found its footing again. Hank spent 3 days checking fences damaged by panicked cattle. Levi helped neighboring ranches move livestock away from burned grazing land. Miss Clara baked enough bread to feed half the territory, and Emma followed Savannah everywhere. One morning, Savannah found the girl sitting cross-legged on the porch with a spelling book balanced on her knees. "You skipped breakfast." Emma shrugged. "I wanted to finish this chapter." Savannah sat beside her. The boards creaked softly beneath them. The repaired section near the corner still looked newer than the rest. Emma pointed to a word. "Stubborn." Savannah smiled. "You already know that one." "I do." Emma looked toward the barn. "That's Uncle Wyatt." The answer came so quickly that Savannah laughed before she could stop herself. Emma grinned. The sound startled both of them, because laughter had become common around Copper Mesa, common enough that nobody noticed it right away. Not until they remembered how quiet the ranch used to be. Later that afternoon, Savannah was helping Hank organize old account books in the office beside the bunkhouse. Dust floated through shafts of sunlight. Receipts, feed invoices, water agreements, tax notices. Years of paper stacked into leaning towers. Hank scratched his beard. "Boss hates paperwork." "I noticed. He'd rather wrestle a steer." Savannah turned another page, then stopped. "What is this?" Hank leaned closer. The document looked old, older than most of the papers nearby. The edges had yellowed. A faded ribbon still held several pages together. Hank's expression changed. Immediately. "I haven't seen that in years." "What is it?" He hesitated, then gently took the file from her hands. Something that belonged to Wyatt. That night, curiosity stayed with her. Not because she wanted secrets, because everyone at Copper Mesa seemed to carry pieces of old sadness. Pieces they rarely spoke about. The answer came unexpectedly. After supper. Emma had fallen asleep on the couch with a book against her chest. Miss Clara carried her upstairs. Hank headed toward the bunkhouse, and Savannah remained alone by the fireplace. The old file sat on a side table. She hadn't touched it, but Wyatt noticed her looking at it. His eyes followed hers, then settled quietly on the folder. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, he crossed the room, picked it up, turned it over in his hands. Her name was Rebecca. Savannah looked up. The word surprised her, because she hadn't asked. Wyatt stared into the fire. "We were supposed to get married." The flames cracked softly. Orange light flickered across his face. "Long time ago." Savannah waited. He didn't seem like a man who shared much. Interrupting felt wrong. "She got sick." His voice remained calm, almost too calm. "Fever came through the territory." A pause. "She didn't survive it." Silence filled the room. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. The kind that settles when the truth finally arrives. Savannah looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry." Wyatt nodded once. Nothing more. No dramatic story. No speech. Just facts. and somehow that made it hurt more. After a while he stood, put the folder back on the shelf, then walked outside. Savannah watched him through the window, standing alone beneath the stars, hat in his hands, looking toward the dark hills, as though part of him still lived somewhere out there. 3 days later, the fire returned. Not the main blaze, something worse. A sudden shift in wind, a pocket of flames racing through dry grass at the base of the canyon. The alarm bell rang shortly after sunset. Ranch hands rushed toward the corrals. Horses stamped nervously. Smoke rolled through the valley, thicker this time, closer. Savannah helped Miss Clara move supplies into wagons, water barrels, blankets, medical kits. The smell of burning grass filled the air. Emma stood beside the porch rail watching the orange glow. Then suddenly, she wasn't there anymore. Savannah noticed first. "Emma?" No answer. The yard erupted into shouting. Lanterns swung through darkness. Voices called her name. Panic spread fast. Wyatt mounted his horse before anyone else could speak. "Check the creek! Hank, search the south trail!" The ranch exploded into motion. Minutes felt like hours. Smoke drifted through every corner of the property. Then someone shouted from the ridge. A rider, moving fast. Wyatt, and in front of him sat Emma, wrapped tightly in his coat. Safe. The relief nearly brought Savannah to her knees. But when Wyatt dismounted, she saw the way he moved, slowly. One arm pressed against his side, his breathing uneven. He handed Emma down. Only then did he stumble. Just once, but it was enough. By midnight, he lay in the downstairs guest room because climbing stairs hurt too much. A doctor from Dust Hollow arrived near dawn. Bruised ribs, exhaustion, smoke inhalation. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to keep him in bed. The ranch finally quieted. Emma slept. The fire crews succeeded. The danger passed. And sometime after midnight, Savannah carried a fresh cup of coffee into Wyatt's room. He was awake, looking toward the window. Moonlight stretched across the floorboards. "You should be sleeping," she said. "So should you." She placed the coffee beside him. Neither touched it. For a while they simply sat there, listening to the night. "You scared her." His eyes shifted toward her. "Emma." A faint smile touched his mouth. "I know. You scared me too." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Silence followed. Different this time. Wyatt looked at her. Really looked at her. The room suddenly felt smaller. The space between them seemed shorter than it was. "I didn't mean to." His voice was low, honest. Savannah swallowed. Neither looked away. The air changed. Not dramatically. Not all at once, just enough. Enough for both of them to feel it. She stood. Too quickly. "I should let you rest." Her hand reached the door, then stopped. Because Wyatt's hand had closed gently around her wrist. Not demanding. Not pulling. Just asking her to stay. For 1 second. 1 breath. 1 truth. When she turned back, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The distance disappeared on its own. And the kiss happened quietly, like something that had been traveling toward them for a very long time. Outside, the last glow of the wildfire faded beyond the mountains. Inside, neither of them seemed interested in pretending anymore. But dawn was coming, and so was something far more dangerous. The next morning, a rider arrived from Dust Hollow, carrying a folded notice. Hank read it first. Then his face hardened. "What is it?" Savannah asked. Hank looked toward Wyatt, then toward her. Finally, he handed over the paper. At the top was a reward notice. $1,000 for information leading to the location of Savannah Reed. Signed by Gideon Crowley. $1,000. Enough money to change a man's life. Enough money to make loyalty feel expensive. And suddenly, the ranch no longer felt quite as safe as it had the day before. Maybe that's the moment that stays with you after the story ends. Not the fire, not the chase, not even the reward notice folded in someone's pocket. Maybe it's the quiet realization that the people who change our lives rarely arrive when everything is easy. They show up when we're tired, afraid, carrying wounds nobody else can see. If you put yourself in Savannah's place, what would you do? Would you keep running, knowing every mile might bring another danger? Or would you risk staying where your heart finally felt at home? And if you were Wyatt, would you open the door again after loss had already taken so much from you? The truth is, most of us spend part of our lives building walls. We tell ourselves they're there to keep pain out, but sometimes they also keep love out. Healing doesn't always arrive with grand speeches or perfect timing. Sometimes it arrives in a shared cup of coffee, a repaired porch board, a child laughing again, or a hand reaching for yours when you're ready to walk away. That's what makes a family. Not blood alone, not promises forced upon us. Choice. If this story touched something in your own life, tell me where you're watching from and what moment stayed with you the most. And if you enjoy stories about second chances, quiet courage, and the people who help us find our way home, I hope you'll join me again. There are still many roads to travel, many mysteries to uncover, and many hearts waiting for their own place in the West.